Welcome. I'm Arlene Bloom, the Executive Director of the Green Science Policy Institute. Our institute is made up of scientists who design and share research with the goal of reducing harm from entire classes of chemicals. Today, you're going to learn about surprising results of peer-reviewed research that just went online in ES&T Letters, finding potentially harmful PFAS chemicals in about half of 231 cosmetics tested. The research comes from the University of Notre Dame, Indiana University, Toronto University, and our institute. PFAS chemicals are particularly interesting to scientists. They're composed of a string of carbons surrounded by fluorines, and the carbon-fluorine bond is extremely strong. It's so strong that these chemicals never break down in the environment. They're called forever chemicals. They also make products. They have useful properties. They add stain and water repellency to products. They're useful in firefighting foam. However, all the PFAS that have been studied, and only a few number of the many thousands have been studied, they've all found to be harmful, and you'll hear more about that later, but they are associated with serious health harms from cancer to obesity to more severe COVID-19 outcomes. And they contaminate the drinking water of many millions, are in the bodies of nearly all of us. Our scientist colleagues and our institute believe that preventing harm from PFAS is the best policy. Once they are out in the world, it's expensive, perhaps impossible to really clean them up. So we believe that preventing and stopping their use in products, unless they're essential, and if they are looking for safer alternatives, is the way to go. And that's what we're going to be learning about today. Our institute has a website called PFAS Central, and it has the latest PFAS news, events, good science, policy, and we encourage you to go to PFAS Central to learn more. And also the most popular page on PFAS Central is our PFAS free page that lists products that don't contain any PFAS. This was made at the request of communities who've been drinking PFAS contaminated water, sometimes for decades. We're very happy that so many of you are here today, and we especially welcome cosmetics retailers and manufacturers. We would like to encourage you today to specify products without any intentional PFAS, to test your products for unintentional PFAS and figure out where it came from and stop it, and to join the list of PFAS-free products here on our website. So please do get in touch with the Green Science Policy Institute to learn more about PFAS. And if you'd like your products listed on our PFAS-free page, you can send us a message now via the chat or through our website. Now we're going to hear short talks about the new research and legislation around PFAS from distinguished scientists and political leaders, followed by a Q&A. If you have questions, please put them in the chat and include if you want to address your question to a specific speaker. This meeting is being recorded. So I would now like to introduce Connecticut Senator Richard Blumenthal. Senator Blumenthal was, in my experience, the first legislator to recognize the harm of PFAS and has been working to reduce that harm since 2015. He's the chair of the Senate Subcommittee on Consumer Protection. Welcome, Senator Blumenthal. We applaud your committed and long-term leadership on PFAS.
Thank you, Arlene, and thank you to the Green Science Policy Institute and to you personally and to all of the scientists and very distinguished academics and advocates who are on this call, and also to the manufacturers who hopefully will adopt safer practices and make their products better. And you're absolutely right. I've been on a crusade against PFAS. There is nothing safe and nothing good about PFAS chemicals. In cosmetics, there is nothing safe and there is nothing good about PFAS chemicals. They add nothing And the ban that we are introducing today with bipartisan legislation will save millions of people from putting poisons on their faces, toxic chemicals that are absorbed or ingested through mascara, cosmetic foundations, lipstick. They are forever chemicals, which means they are unsafe at any level because they accumulate in people's bodies, causing cancer, thyroid disease, liver damage, fertility problems. These chemicals are a menace, hidden in plain sight in the cosmetics that people literally display on their faces every day. So I feel very passionately that we can make cosmetics much safer and raise awareness among consumers so that they will demand, literally demand, safer, better products. There is no reason, none, for PFAS to be in cosmetics. Yes, they may serve a preservative role, but that same function can be performed by other safe chemicals, just as in firefighting foam, in stick-resistant pans, in pizza packages. PFAS chemicals can be replaced by safer substances that perform the same function. Let's be very clear. PFAS is a toxin. It's a group of chemicals that are poisonous. And the idea that it will be ingested when people swallow lipstick, as they do commonly, or absorbed through the skin, through foundations applied to faces, or through eye ducts as a result of mascara, is absolutely petrifying to me. Although I don't use cosmetics myself, we need to sound the alarm. We should sound the alarm so consumers will be as outraged as we all should be that millions of people are in fact poisoning themselves by putting these toxins on their skin unknowingly and likely unwillingly because they are simply not informed and not offered choices. So my plea to the manufacturers is do the right thing before we pass this ban. It's bipartisan legislation, and we will continue to work hard. And in fact, as chairman of the Subcommittee on Consumer Protection, I intend to hold hearings on PFAS to alert the public and very definitely sound the alarm. Thanks very much to all of you for being on this call, and I hope to be available for questions if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Blumenthal, for your eloquent words and your long-term campaign for healthier products, which is healthier people and world. Okay, next, I would like to welcome Representative Debbie Dingell from Michigan and thank her for her leadership on much critical PFAS legislation. For example, the PFAS Action Act, which would set needed drinking water standards, designate PFAS as a hazardous substance, and so many other important changes that we need to protect our communities and our military facilities across the country. Welcome, Representative Dingell, and thank you for your many excellent bills to reduce harm from PFAS.
Arlene, thank you for that kind introduction. It's and the work that you do and all of your colleagues do. And it's an honor to be here with Senator Blumenthal, who does so very much for consumers on so many different issues. And good afternoon to everyone here who cares obviously enough about this subject to be here, and the great work that the Green Science Policy Institute has done and been at the forefront of leadership on combating the PFAS crisis. So thank you to all of you. You know, we're here today, and Senator Blumenthal laid a lot of it out, because we are not addressing the harmful contamination from PFAS. And people need to understand this is a forever chemical. It doesn't go away. We know from workers that were building or making this, manufacturing this in the plant when they first began manufacturing. It accrues in your body. It has very dangerous health side effects, and it's very difficult to get rid of. And people do not realize. I come from a state that has done more work on PFAS because we understand what contaminated water means. But even in a state that's highlighted, and not enough people know that PFAS is in our water, but they don't understand it's in our food containers. I've also introduced legislation about that. And the latest work that Arlene talked about and Senator talked about, it's in our cosmetics. The PFAS is an enduring public health and environmental issue that we've just got to deal with, period. Ignoring it isn't making it go away. It is harming more people, and it's urgent that we address it immediately. Thanks to the Green Science Policy Institute and their extensive research in this report, we now know that many waterproof mascaras, liquid lipsticks, and foundation contain PFAS. But what's most dangerous is PFAS isn't listed on their labels. After the study, I went and, I put my lipstick on to try to class up the way I looked, and I looked at what was there. No PFAS was listed, but how do I know it doesn't have PFAS? This is a large health concern. Cosmetics like this can be ingested and absorbed through our skin. If my foundation has it, which I use foundation every day, it can go through the skin. My eye makeup, you can tell I wear it, it can go in through the tear ducts. And most consumers don't even know that these harmful cosmetics exist in these products that they're using daily. In a study from the Environmental Working Group, they identified 13 different PFAS chemicals in 200 products from 28 brands of cosmetics. It's preventable, and we got to ban PFAS from cosmetics now. What's even worse? Okay, so we think, okay, maybe the senator doesn't wear makeup. It's probably more women wear it than men, but it's not just affecting the consumer; it's impacting everybody. From our cosmetics, PFAS can trickle into our drinking water, go into the air, and land up in our food, whether it's while companies make the products or when we wash them down the drain. We need strong federal leadership now to address these pervasive and harmful chemicals. That's why Congressman Fred Upton, a Republican from my state, and I introduced the PFAS Action Act to protect all Americans from PFAS and accelerate the cleanup process. We'll be marking that up tomorrow in the Energy and Commerce Committee. And that's why I'm working with Senator Collins and Senator Blumenthal to introduce new legislation, the No PFAS in Cosmetic Act in the House this week. We need to ban it, period. And all cosmetics so that consumers aren't poisoning their body and don't even realize it. We also need to make sure we're aggressively work to ban PFAS in food containers. Too many people don't know when you go and get those carryouts, we've all been getting this last year, food containers have PFAS in them. And that's why I'll be reintroducing legislation in the next month on that as well. We all have to work together to protect human health in our environment. Further inaction means if we don't do something, more people are being poisoned every single day and the contamination spreads further. So I thank all of my colleagues, and there really are a number of them on both sides of the aisle who are invested in this issue. It's a bipartisan issue. And we just have to get together. We have to educate people and get these bills passed. So thanks again to the Green Science Policy Institute and to all of our partners in the fight to protect people from PFAS. Together, working together, we can make a difference. Thank you, Arlene. And like the senator, I hope I can answer questions at the end.
Thank you so much, Representative Dingell, for your tireless work and for the fact that it's bipartisan. Reaching across the aisle successfully is how I like to say that I think things are fairly functional on the Hill around PFAS, which is really a good thing. So we really appreciate all your legislation and hope it goes well for the PFAS Action Act. So important. Well, our next speaker is the awesome Rob Bilott, who has been fighting against PFAS longer than any of us, and often on his own. I will not try to tell his story, but I really recommend the movie Dark Waters if you haven't seen it, where he is played by Mark Ruffalo. And even more, I recommend his excellent book, Exposure, if you have not read it. So welcome, Rob, and thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much, Arlene. It's a real honor to be on this call today, and really exciting to be talking about the legislation that's being proposed. This entire country right now, in fact, the entire world is facing really an unprecedented environmental and public health crisis, a crisis that is being presented by a class of completely man-made chemicals. These chemicals we've been referring to as PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkylated substances. Quite a mouthful, but these chemicals did not even exist on the planet prior to World War II. Yet now we're realizing that they are all over the planet, and most concerningly, in the blood of virtually every person in this country, and almost every person in the world. And this is something that isn't new. This has been going on for decades and decades. These chemicals not only have this really concerning characteristics of being persistent, as you heard from Arlene, staying in the environment virtually forever, staying in people as they build up over time, bioaccumulating, and being toxic. These chemicals have been linked to a variety of different health effects, as you'll hear from others here in a few moments. But this has been going on for quite some time. And unfortunately, those of you that did see the movie Dark Waters or read the book Exposure, you saw what it took to get this information out to the public, to scientists, to regulators, to legislators, that these chemicals even exist, that they are out there, that we are being exposed. And it took incredible efforts to get that information out so that the rest of us finally begin to understand that this contamination is occurring. And now that we know these chemicals are there, and almost every day we learn that this group is expanding and growing in numbers to hundreds, if not thousands, of different man-made chemicals. We are seeing efforts undertaken to try to find out, how are they getting out there in the environment? How are they getting in us? And most importantly, how do we stop that? And it's what we've been seeing is incredible focus and activity trying to understand exactly these issues by terrific scientists. And I'm honored to be on the call here, and we're going to hear from some of them explaining how we're trying to find out and learn more about how these chemicals are getting out there, how they're getting into our drinking water. There's been a lot of discussion about some products, such as firefighting foam. We know that these chemicals have also been used in clothing and in turnout gear for firefighters, in fast food wrappers and packaging. And the more we know about where we're being exposed, the more we're able to take steps to stop it and to take action to protect people. And frankly, for companies that are making these materials to understand that they've even been using these. A lot of this information, unfortunately, isn't readily available about where these chemicals are and what products they are in that companies might be purchasing. So it's incredibly important that we have this kind of research that's being done. It's terrifically important information to get this science out there to tell us where are the different sources of exposure and to give us the tools we need to start making changes in how we produce products, giving consumers the ability to start making choices, and importantly, to help legislators and our elected officials develop ways to protect us going forward. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And I'm honored to be on the call. I look forward to hearing from the scientists on a little more detail about exactly what was found. So thank you.
Many thanks to you, Rob, as always, for your good words, your leadership, and your years of tireless work that I think are starting to pay off in big ways. Thank you. So next, we have Linda Birnbaum, our country's leading health scientist, or has been. She is a scientist emeritus and was former director of the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, of the National Toxicology Program. She knows as much as anyone about the health effects of PFAS, which are fairly scary. And Linda will now share them, followed by Graham.
Well, thank you very much. It's really an honor to hear what's going on the Hill. And I want to thank Senator Blumenthal and Representative Dingell for providing a lot of leadership in this area of PFAS, because as Rob said, we are all exposed. Every person in the US has these chemicals in their body, and these chemicals do not leave. Many of these chemicals stay in our bodies for years, not days like most drugs do, or hours as many drugs do, but they stay with us for a very long time. And as you've already heard, we're exposed to these through the air that we breathe, through the water that we drink, from the food that we eat, and from loads and loads of consumer products. And this new paper really hits us over the head with how products that we directly put on our bodies and can get into our bodies, especially through our mouths and through our eyes, have these chemicals. So why are we concerned with these chemicals? We're concerned because they cause a wide variety of health effects. Now, why do I say cause? Because not only have there been a wealth of human observational studies where we see strong associations with these chemicals, we also have experimental animal studies, which really are showing essentially the same effects in multiple animal species, not just rats and mice, but birds and fish and non-human primates as well. We also have a wealth of data showing these effects in, for example, cultured human cells, as well as cultured animal cells. So there's a great deal of support for what we have observed in epidemiology studies. And before I go over the specifics, I just want to mention that there are EPA says there are over 9,200 of these chemicals that have been made either intentionally or not intentionally. And as Rob said, none of these ever occurred in nature. I think it's important to realize that limited testing that has been done on some of the newer, what are often called the short chain PFAS, we are seeing essentially the same or very similar effects that we have seen with the long chain. So what are these effects? These effects include cancer. They include effects on kidney cancer, testicular cancer, and other types as well. In addition, we are seeing effects on liver function with elevated cholesterol. We see hypertension during pregnancy, which some of you may know can be life-threatening, both for the mother and the baby. We see babies who are smaller than they should be when they are born. We see effects on our immune system. We see something called ulcerative colitis, but we also are seeing suppression of the primary immune response. And this has been associated with increased sensitivity or severity, I should say, of COVID. We already know, and there's already data showing increased risk, for example, of flu for people who have higher levels of these compounds. So there are also effects on the female reproductive system, not only the male. There are effects, for example, on our nervous system, and we are seeing impacts on the developing brain of our children. So I want to stress that these chemicals, which never existed naturally, will be with us essentially forever, and we can do something about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Linda. That was scary, but eloquent and really good. And you have been, for decades, leading the way for healthier products, and we really appreciate it. Okay, now it's Graham's turn. Sorry, Graham. So Heather Whitehead actually was the first author of the study. She's a student of Graham's, and they're both at the University of Notre Dame. And so, as I said, Graham's a professor of physics, and he's going to tell us about the study. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you, Arlene, and thank you all. It's an honor to be with the other speakers. This is now the less known speaker, but I'm happy to report that I'm the PI on this paper that was co-authored with several colleagues at Indiana, University of Toronto, and Green Science Policy, and even ETH Zurich. And the study was published today in Environmental Sci-Tech Letters. And I'm just going to summarize a couple points from the study today, right now, but I'll be available later for questions if there are any. Our study focused on cosmetics in North American, both US and Canada, because there had been previous work done on Asia and in Europe. And we thought it was time to do it in the US. And we found that PFAS use in cosmetics was fairly widespread. We identified hundreds of products that looked like they could contain PFAS, and then we dug down on a subset of those, and we identified the PFAS that were within them. And that was not easy work. It took several years to complete, but we have now reported this in a peer-reviewed journal for several reasons. The main takeaways are that we found new types of PFAS that hadn't been found in the prior studies, the fluorotellular alcohols and the fluoromethacrylates. Those were new. Nobody knew they were being used there. We also found that they were in new types of cosmetics. These waterproof mascara hadn't been explored before, as had the new liquid lips. And those were both found to be relatively high use for these fluorinated compounds. And then more importantly, of the 29 specific compounds we dug down on and actually looked at what PFAS were available in them, we found PFAS in all 29. And some of them were in rather high quantities. Not all, some of them were there in trace amounts, but the majority of these, 20 of them, had very high concentrations of PFAS in them. And it implied that there might be some intentional use because they were correlated with such things as waterproof properties or long life properties. And that's what you would use fluorinated chemicals for. So there was both unintentional and surely unintentional use of a kind of cross-contamination in some cases, but there was also intentional use in these products. And then the most alarming thing is that of the 29 products, only one of them had any PFAS listed on a label. It was listed as Teflon. And that was actually one of the low PFAS measurements. We had high fluorine because of the Teflon, but it was low in PFAS. So that means that the products in North America are not being labeled such that a consumer could find out how to avoid them. If you wanted to avoid PFAS products, it wouldn't be possible with the current labeling as we found on these packages. We looked at over 200 compounds and read the labels from it, and fewer than 8% had PFAS listed on them. Yet we have found PFAS in more than half of them, we believe. We found it in the 29 products, absolutely. We are sending this paper out such that we can bring attention to it. I don't think it is going to be something to be instantly, it's one source of exposure. We've heard about many sources of exposure, but it really can come from both directions, both direct application and through the environment. We're trying to get the industry to respond and say, this is something that could be very easily corrected and could be identified by labeling, and the consumers can identify what they're buying. And that's the purpose of the paper. I'm happy to answer questions later.
Thank you, Graham, and thank you for your years of good research. Really appreciate it. And our next scientist is Tom Bruton, who's a senior scientist at the Green Science Policy Institute, our institute. Tom's an expert on the science and policy of PFAS. He leads our work, and he has, can you believe, a more optimistic message. So Tom is going to tell us about reducing harm from PFAS.
Thank you, Arlene. I want to start out by picking up where Graham left off and talking about exposure. The first thing that we think of, most of us, when we hear that PFAS are in cosmetics is exposure of the people wearing those cosmetics. The potential for PFAS to be absorbed through the skin or accidentally eaten, maybe. And those are serious concerns, but they're not the only concerns, because the use of PFAS in cosmetics also contributes to PFAS pollution throughout the life cycle of these products. Manufacturing of PFAS is a major source of contamination, and factories where cosmetics are made are potential sources of PFAS releases too. After the cosmetics are used, they're often washed off and go down the drain, which contributes to the PFAS load in our wastewater, or they're thrown away and sent to landfills, which can increase PFAS levels in landfill leachate. And once these chemicals are out in the environment, they're difficult and costly to clean up. And to give you some perspective on that, a 2019 report by the Nordic Council of Ministers estimated that the cost of remediating PFAS in Europe over the next 20 years is likely to be on the order of 17 billion euros. And so preventing this pollution by reducing the uses of PFAS in the first place is a much more cost-effective and practical solution. And that's the direction that that EU regulators are heading. Several European countries are now proposing to restrict or to ban all non-essential uses of PFAS starting in just a few years. In the meantime, some companies and even some entire industries are already doing this work of reducing their PFAS use. In recent years, we've seen the carpet industry, for example, move from a place where PFAS stain guards were the standard to a place where now most manufacturers are no longer using them. This happened because of demand from customers, because of pending regulation in states like California, and probably also because of liability concerns. We at Green Science Policy played a small role in this change by organizing a pair of workshops where we invited representatives from the carpet industry to come and talk about PFAS. And I think it's fair to say that many of the manufacturers came into those conversations skeptical that PFAS were a problem. The thinking was that as long as EPA hadn't banned these chemicals, they must be okay. But after hearing about the concerns from scientists and about where the regulatory landscape is heading, those manufacturers came to realize that phasing out PFAS was in their long-term best interest. And similar changes happening in the food service industry too, where more and more restaurant chains and retailers are making commitments to no longer use food packaging with PFAS. Graham Peasley and our institute and others helped catalyze this movement back in 2017 with our paper finding fluorinated chemicals in US fast food packaging. And since then, the movement has only gained momentum, thanks to the efforts of many different groups. And so we'd like to end by challenging the cosmetics industry to do the same thing, to take a close look at your supply chain, figure out if and where PFAS are used, ask whether the functions they're serving are really needed, and if they are, find safer alternatives to use instead. And by doing this, you'll not only be giving your customers healthier products, but you'll be helping turn off the tap on PFAS pollution. Thank you very much. And now I'll hand it back to Arlene.
Well, thank you, Tom. And thanks to all the speakers. Awesome. Our speakers, to the scientists and legislators for all your great work, and to all of you in the audience. We apologize if we didn't get to your questions, and maybe if we have your email, we'll try to answer a few more. A lot of the answers I think you can find if you go to PFAS Central. And we actually have a website called 6 Classes that has a nice PFAS page with a 4-minute video on PFAS. So we recommend some of the answers will be there. So we'll just end. And I feel really optimistic that this could be a turning point for PFAS and cosmetics. The word is out, the science is out. We have strong, excellent legislation. And so we're hoping that things are changing. And I think the people who spoke and all of those of you in the audience are the people who can change this. So we really want to thank all of you and look forward to a healthier future with much less PFAS. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.